Welcome to the Cosmic Buster. My name is Bobby Codey. In this video I want to take a look at an article that I came across, and I want to use it as a jumping off point. The article is about fat shaming essentially, and a little bit of a spat between two young women online. But I want to use it as a jumping off point to talk about the feminine divine as well. So that's where this is going. First I want to take a look at that article. Essentially there was a young lady, Wendy Chang, is her real name. She goes by Xiaxue, I think is how you pronounce it, on YouTube and Instagram. She's from Singapore. She criticized this one model who was rather obese, and it was a back and forth. I'm just going to go to the article and read off the article real quick, and then we'll get into some details on how this talks about beauty and changing standards of beauty, and what that means historically as well, because I think that's very important. I think it'll change your perspective on history and what we know about ourselves from a human historical perspective. So, from this article it says, Wendy Chang, who goes by Xiaxue, as I stated on Instagram and YouTube, received criticism for insulting a model. Okay, she said the model, LaShawnee Stewart, was morbidly obese, and her weight was disgusting because obesity should never have been seen as attractive, because death and disease isn't attractive. The model Stewart saw Cheng's comments on her Instagram story and asked why thin people were so obsessed with calling her unattractive. The article then goes to talk about how some people supported Wendy Chang's attack on the large obese model. Some people supported the large model, back and forth, whatever. But this goes to standards of beauty. For me personally, my standards of beauty are typical for all men, but I've always tried to question those standards of beauty. I've dated a range of women. You'd be shocked at the range of women that I dated, because I always question, where my perceptions come from and my values, and I always try to challenge those values to make myself better. So for me, this is about opinions essentially, and opinions that people should try to see the other side for. But I want to use this as a jumping off point for our human history and how our standards of beauty, and particularly in regard to the female form, has changed. I also talk about it within the timeline of history, because I think this will give people a greater understanding of our long-range history as I have come to understand it. Have been, I'm going to put up matter of fact, I'm going to put up a photograph real quick here. This is a timeline I used. Essentially, there's what's called zodiacal ages. These zodiacal ages last about 2,160 years. And each zodiacal age has its own thematic element to it that appears to be, at least from a Western civilization standpoint, these thematic elements are incorporated into society. For instance, if you take a look at the image I show here with the zodiacal ages, we are currently in the age of Pisces. It started around the time of Jesus, and it's ending right about now. There's some question about when the age of Aquarius begins and the age of Pisces ends, but we're just at that fluxion where we're entering the age of Aquarius. Jesus' time was when he was just entering the age of Pisces. It was the beginning of the age of Pisces. Now, notice, if you know your Bible and your New Testament, one of the standard symbols that Jesus used was the fish. If you take a look at born-again Christians, they use the symbol of the fish on the bumper stickers. They have a fish symbol. Jesus talks about how he's a fisherman of men. This fish image is replete in the New Testament. And it appears to be to me and other people who have studied history that these zodiacal ages, for whatever reason, the religions take on the thematic element of the zodiacal ages. So age of Pisces, the age of Pisces are the fish. Christianity, the main element of Christianity, in particular the New Testament, is the fish. If you go back to the age of Taurus, you will see that the bull religions predominate. Now, I think Mithra is one example of those. If you take a look at the Old Testament and Moses, and they were talking about sacrificing a ram. Why sacrificing a ram? The age of Aries. That was the age of Aries. That tells you what time they were doing this in. So this is around 2000 BC is where I put Moses. So these zodiacal ages have some type of influence on human history. Now, whether that is actually a physical, real thing or not is questionable, but I don't doubt that there could be some type of celestial cycle that is influencing the way that we perceive human history. Celestial bodies and celestial mechanics influence the way we are as humans. There's no question about that. The female menstrual cycle is a 28-day menstrual cycle. It is a patterned after or follows the cycle of the moon. You know, the moon has a 28-day cycle of the full moon from the full moon to no moon, and back again. It's a 28-day cycle. It's thought that the female body is essentially in response to this lunar cycle, and that's unquestionable. I mean, there's a definite correlation there. So, you know, celestial objects and celestial cycles can influence us as well, and I have to question whether our knowledge of the zodiacal ages actually influences human history and the broad human behavior patterns that we see. Now, another aspect of this that I'd like to talk about is the matriarchies and patriarchies, and how I think the zodiacal ages actually point to transitions between matriarchies and patriarchies. The reason I say that is because right now, I've written a book. My first book that I read, in The New Lane. I'll post actually a video. I did a video on it in the past. I'll post a video to that, and I'll also post a link down below if you'd like to take a look at the book at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. But the book is about, in part, one of the themes running throughout it is the divine feminine. I wrote this book in 2003 because I saw us entering a time, I could see it, where we were entering a time of the divine feminine, or matriarchies, where women would take on a much greater leadership role. I don't think that was as obvious back in 2003 as it has become now, 17 years later in 2020. I don't think there's any question that that is happening right now. Back in 2003, it wasn't as obvious, at least to most people. It was to me, though, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, within that divine feminine symbolism. Now, my whole point in that, in going back to that, is that us entering this time where I believe we're going back to the divine feminine, I think that it's this big, much bigger, larger cycle. What you'll find is that about 6,000 years ago, a little more than 6,000 years ago, it was the opposite. About 6,000 plus, I'd say 163.20, about 6,480 years ago, doing the math quickly in my head, we were entering a time where we had been dominated by matriarchies, and we moved into a patriarchal system. There's no question that that happened. In the Indo-European area, above India, essentially, Eastern Russia, Western China, that area, there's no question they went from a matriarchy to patriarchy And that's when the nomadic tribes started just going nuts and raiding people. Patriarchs were in control, and they're like, all right, let's raid people and kill them. There was no doubt that started happening once that whole civilization, the Indo-European civilization, went from matriarchy to patriarchy. So what we see are these cycles, about 6,000 year cycles from matriarchy to patriarchy. Now, I have to think that based on the evidence as well, the standards of beauty for women, of what is perceived as attractive in women, also changes based on whether we're in a matriarchy or patriarchy. As I stated, I think we're moving into a matriarchy right now. And the reason that standards of female beauty are being challenged in this way, like the initial article with Wendy Chang and LaShawnee Stewart represents, is because we were moving away from that patriarchal view of the perfect female form to the matriarchal view of the perfect female form. And that has historical basis. I'm going to show you that historical basis. We have found ancient goddess figurines, essentially. The ancient goddess figurines that we find that are very ancient, either between 12,000 and 6,000 BC, which I put as the approximate time of the matriarchy. I'll put a couple of the figurines up there that we found. One is Catalhoyuk. So beast. The goddess figurine is beast. This is consistent. We found much older ones from the Paleolithic, which is tens and tens of thousands of years ago. And again, I'll put that, I think it's called the Venus of Willendorf. It's obese. It's obese. So the feminine divine was considered this large, huge body type. After the transition to patriarchy, the female goddess figurines changed. I'm going to put one up here right now. This is a Babylonian image from 1800 BC. Look at that. It's the current standard of female beauty that we see, with the more, what's the word I'm looking for? The more figure eight shape, I guess you could say. The thinner waist, still more ample bosom and wide hips, but not on a obese level. So I think what we're seeing here is essentially a large-scale change, historical change, that appears to me to be generated by celestial cycles. And as these celestial cycles move, our history changes, and our perception of history, and our perception of our society and selves as well. My warning would be wary of going to extremes. I think that celebrating extreme obesity would be just as dangerous as celebrating extreme thinness to the point of anorexia. Either extreme is bad, and we have to be wary of that. And I would argue that we should be wary of that regarding the matriarchy and the patriarchy as well. Any male-dominated society still needs women in positions of leadership to offer compassion and a female perspective. And any female-dominated society needs the men in positions of leadership and advisory capacity as well, to make sure that our society is protected, because that's the male prerogative, is protection. So thanks for watching, everyone. Comment down below whether you agree or disagree. Like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the sun shining down on my right-hand side here, but my ability to do these is fairly limited, and I gotta take advantage of this room when I can get it, and regardless of the weather. Sometimes I got the sun over here, sometimes I got it over there, sometimes I got a nice cloudy day where I don't have to worry about different shadows on me. Thanks for watching, everybody. One more time, I say it: like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day. Bye-bye.